we're going to bring in attorney for President Trump himself, Will Scharf, who was standing right next to the president today at Trump Tower. I saw you. You spoke there today. We were originally there to talk about E. Jean Carroll. And then Mershon comes down and says he's going to push back the sentencing to November 26th. So we'll start there with the breaking news. What's the reaction to that?
Yeah, look, the fact that this trial was allowed to proceed at the height of a presidential election was absurd. The fact that Judge Mershon scheduled sentencing initially for just a few days before the Republican National Convention was absurd. The fact that he rescheduled sentencing for September 18th was absurd. So we're happy that thanks to the Supreme Court's ruling on presidential immunity, thanks to Judge Mershon understanding the very serious ramifications of attempting to rush sentencing the way that he was, we're happy that he saw a better path here, and we're excited that we'll have time to properly brief issues of presidential immunity after he issues his initial ruling in September. And we're happy that President Trump has one less thing to worry about in the lead up to the November election.
Do you think Judge Mershon had a come-to-Jesus moment or some moment of clarity, or what do you think possibly was the impetus behind this decision?
I think the most likely option is that he understood the very real legal issues that our presidential immunity briefing presented here. The DA's office introduced evidence at trial, introduced evidence in front of the grand jury that under the Supreme Court's opinion in Trump v. United States, they simply were not allowed to introduce. That corrupted the trial proceedings. That's a very clear ground, in my view, for reversal of the entire jury verdict. So I think Judge Mershon understands that these are very serious legal issues that are likely going to be resolved in a lengthy appeal. And the idea that you would try to rush sentencing or sort of rig the calendar to prevent that just isn't right. So we're excited about the path ahead. We're excited that, again, President Trump has one less thing to worry about in the lead up to the November election.
Will, do you think Mershon was worried about giving Trump a bump by sentencing him? Because we've seen time and time again when he goes into court, the polls go up. Do you think he so in a way, this was a political decision maybe?
I can't put myself in Judge Mershon's mind on that sort of a question, but I will say that you're absolutely right. That as the American people have seen this campaign of lawfare play out in the courts against President Trump, it hasn't hurt President Trump. If anything, it's made him into a victim. The American people understand that these are deeply un-American acts, this campaign of lawfare and election interference, and they've rejected it wholeheartedly. So I think, President Trump is going to win in November, and I don't think anything they can do to him in a courtroom between now and then is going to affect that.
And we were hearing throughout many law enforcement sources that Rikers Island, where President Trump would have been housed had he been sentenced to jail, but of course it would have been appealed and et cetera, they were preparing for Trump to go there. I mean, that's a very dangerous situation to have a former president behind bars. So maybe you think could have played a part in all of this, even logistically. How is this even possible to do something like this?
This was a jury verdict. This was a trial that was so infected by reversible error that I just don't believe that this jury verdict will stand. And I don't believe that President Trump is going to end up being subjected to any sentence whatsoever, wishful thinking on the left notwithstanding. So there's a lot of alarmism. There's a lot of media hysteria, particularly around this case. But when you look at the facts and when you look at the law, this is a baseless prosecution. We are going to get it overturned on appeal. It's just a question of the timeline.
But what's frightening is this shouldn't have happened in the first place
100%.
if this had been anybody else aside from President Trump. So then that's why I'm not trying to be an alarmist, but when you look at the case in and of itself, it should have never gotten to this point to begin with.
In the history of the United States of America, no former president has been subjected to a prosecution like this. And we've had some presidents who did some really bad stuff. When President Trump talks about election interference, when he talks about this campaign of lawfare, it is absolutely outrageous what they've done to him every step of the way. And I think the American people are going to reject this sort of political prosecution and this misuse of our court system and the rule of law by one political faction to oppress another.